What is this? The Israeli flag? Is this the Israeli flag? Oh, it's my favorite. My favorite flag. Give him 40 billion. I think the next meta in the upcoming year 100% is going to be like the Candace Owens meta, right? Israel will farm Islamophobic narratives. You know, I think the Somali stuff even plays a role in that as well, because as I've shown you already, Israel realized that they can't convince Westerners that Israel is good, but they can actually foment anti-Muslim hatred, right? They can keep pumping Islamophobic narratives, and a lot of Americans tune into that. A lot of Westerners tune into that, especially in Europe, right? Now, of course, it's a little different in America because like we don't have the same like migration patterns that Europe has experienced with Muslims coming into the country. So when you try to say like, well, Muslims control this country in the United States of America, most people will laugh at you. At most, they'll be like, yeah, I think they're kind of weird and scary, but I don't think they're controlling the country. It's much easier to convince an American, the average American, that Jews control the country than Muslims, right? So as much as Israel's basically dropped the ball as far as like defending Israel and trying to explain to Americans that Israel is like a viable and very important, necessary ally, they are fomenting a lot of Islamophobic hatred, right? But the alternative to that is the successful alternative to that, the successful counter narrative to that, unfortunately, is not what I'm doing. I'll just admit that, okay? Especially with the post-Charlie Kirk assassination, I have realized that it is totally irrelevant. The truth is totally irrelevant. It is not a successful way to cut through the noise and to get people back on board with what is actually going on. It is so much more effective if your counter narrative is also made up. Candace Owens showed that. Okay, we're living in AK after Kirk. Okay, this is AK1 after Kirk. Charlie Kirk got assassinated. The American government very clearly had an interest in making him out to be a martyr by force. And they wanted to say that he was killed because of the wave of anti-Trump narratives, the hatred that the left was creating against the Trump administration and Republicans in general. They want to kill you. They hate you. And yet all of those narratives fell by the wayside because Candace Owens came out and straight up said, nah, it was Israel. And then she didn't just stop there. She was like, nah, it's Israel. It's the Jews. And everybody tuned into it. Everybody was like, you know what? That actually makes a lot more sense. A smaller version of that I also saw, I also experienced, was in the immediate aftermath when there was like a time period before they figured out who the shooter was, where everyone was saying this is a transgender Antifa super soldier, to figuring out who the shooter was, and then they found out that he was like from a good family, good stock, white Mormon kid, right? Allegedly. And in that moment, everyone was like, maybe this guy's a groyper. Maybe a groyper killed him. And then a lot of liberals believe that. A lot of liberals were like, oh yeah, this is a Nick Fuentes a super soldier that actually killed Charlie Kirk. And that was also interesting because while it wasn't as, while it wasn't as like mass adopted as the Israel killed Charlie Kirk actually narratives, there was definitely a 24-hour news cycle where a lot of liberals learned about what groypers were and genuinely thought, oh, this got to be a Nick Fuentes fan. Once again, proving to me and everyone who was paying close attention to this stuff that it is much easier to destroy biased narratives on the right by coming out with a false narrative on the left. And that's what's really interesting. I think that we're going to see that more and more. I think like conspiracy theories that are grand, that are increasingly more insane, will be the most effective way to control narratives in the upcoming decade, if we make it out that far. Yeah, it's also much easier to convince Americans that Israel is controlling the USA than it is to convince them that our government supports what Israel does, right? Speaking of which,
it'll continue.
Let's take a look.
Thank you very
Benjamin
much,
Netanyahu,
thank you,
international war criminal, is currently shaking hands with Donald Trump
I have to say that
They're in the White House. They talked the entire morning,
I have to say that
and they're live now.
in addition to what I said, that we've never had a friend, even close, a friend, as President Trump in the White House. I think he's been extraordinary in his friendship and his support for Israel. His principled
I don't know if they're in the Mar-a-Lago. I think they're in the White House, no?
his willingness
Or are
to
they in
just cut
Mar-a-Lago?
through,
Oh, yeah, they're in Mar-a-Lago. They're
get
in
to the
Florida. You're
essence
right.
of things. And I don't say that as a compliment. I just mean it. People have heard me say that behind your back, Mr. President, many times. But I want to say something else. I think we have a partnership, if I can quote you, second to none. I think it's allowed us to do enormous things. You know, people said there was a different conception at one time, which means that America can advance its interest in the Middle East if it opens a lot of daylight between it and Israel. And President Trump has done the exact opposite. He's achieved remarkable things in the Middle East because we work together. We talk about our ideas. Sometimes we have different ideas, but we work it out. And most of the time we see eye to eye. But it's been a remarkable experience, and this was a very, very productive meeting. And may I say, a very good lunch. Thank you. Thank you for your friendship.
Thank you very much, baby.
And thank you for your support. It's meant from the heart.
Thank you. You know, as I said outside, he's been a wartime prime minister, and we were, well, look, I guess I could say I was a wartime president in more places than just Israel, if you think about it. But Israel was a big factor, and we're
Don't
with
they
you.
secretly hate each other? None of that
And
matters,
we'll
brother. What are you
continue to
talking
be
about?
with you, and a lot of good things are happening.
You're watching. You're
in the Middle East.
you're
We have peace
watching
in the Middle East,
double
and we're
dick
gonna try and
suck.
keep it that way. I think we will be very successful in keeping it that way. And you've been a great friend, and I've been a great friend to you and to Israel, and it's been my honor. And the award that I was given was really surprising and very much appreciated.
Well, President Trump has broken so many conventions to the surprise of people, and then they figure out, oh, well, maybe, he was right after all. So we decided to break a convention too, or create a new one, and that is to award the Israel Prize, which in almost our 80 years, we've never awarded it to a non-Israeli, and we're going to award it this year to President Trump. This was announced formally over lunch by our Minister of Education, who's responsible for the Israel Prize. It's going to be awarded to President Donald J. Trump for his tremendous contributions to Israel and the Jewish people. I think it's such a fitting thing, and it would honor us, obviously, Mr. President, if you could visit Israel in that occasion on our Independence Day. But I have to say that this reflects the overwhelming sentiment of Israelis across the spectrum. They appreciate what you've done to help Israel and to help our common battle against the terrorists and those who would destroy our civilization. So, again, that's an expression of thanks.
This isn't going to stop the spitting on non-Israelis? No.
Thank you, baby, very much. That really is a great honor. Any questions, please? We'll go pretty quickly because
I actually agree with them getting this
pretty
prize
much we agree on most of the
10,000%.
things,
This
and
will
you
be a
would
stinking
know
and
what
never
most
wash
of those
off.
things are. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to know if you and the Prime Minister talked about having Israel pull back its troops before Hamas fully disarms. I know that's been an issue. Did you push for that today?
Well, we talked about Hamas and we talked about disarmament, and they're going to be given a very short period of time to disarm, and we'll see how that works out. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be in charge of that from our side, but if they don't disarm as they agreed to do, they agreed to it, and then they'll be held to pay for them. And we don't want that. We're not looking for that. But they have to disarm within a fairly short period of time.
Is Israel withdrawing its forces?
Well, that's a separate subject. We'll talk about that.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Mr. President, did you have a message for the Prime Minister about the West Bank? And are you at all concerned that Israeli settler violence, could be undermining the peace plan?
Well, we have had a discussion, big discussion for a
Oh,
long
a
time
big
on
one.
the West Bank.
Oh, yeah. He
And I
gave him a
wouldn't say
stern
we
talking
agree
to.
on
They're
the
going to
West
stop
Bank
any day now. The
100%.
settlers are going to stop
we,
being ruthless.
We'll come to a conclusion on the West Bank.
If I could ask, what is the
Remember,
Well, I don't wanna
every
do
single
that.
thing,
It'll
this
be
is, in many respects,
an
not
inappropriate
even
time.
remotely
He will
different
do
than the
the right thing. I know
Russia-Ukraine
that. I know him
conversation,
very well. He will
where
do the right thing.
there's
Yes.
no new development, right? Like, there's no real new development. He'll just say whatever he needs to say. They've shut people up. The reality of the matter is Israel does what Israel wants, and no one can
Well, I
actually
know
say anything
President
about it.
Erdogan very well, and as you all know, he's a very good friend of mine.
He'll just say
And,
like,
I
"Oh yeah,
believe
no, I'm
that,
gonna." I
and
talked
do
to him.
respect him,
I
and
talked to him
he
real.
respects
Gave him
him.
a stern talking to. It doesn't
And
matter. None of it is.
They're
It's
not
all
going to have
bullshit.
a problem. They're not going to have a problem. I know him very well. And you've seen me do things with President Erdogan and Turkey that nobody else could have done. We're not going to have a problem. He's done a fantastic job. I'm with him all the way. I'm with Bibi all the way. Nothing's going to happen.
Even like forcing Benjamin Netanyahu's hand to only annex half of Gaza and not the entirety of Gaza, which is what happened with this so-called peace process,
Well, I'm not concerned
was
with
actually a PR move, not necessarily a PR move to start making Israel look good again, right? Because they're not going to be able to do that. But it was basically a moment where the Trump administration had to be like, listen, guys, like, we're with you all the way, 100% of the way. But like, it's gotten to a point where like, you're going to lose everybody. Okay. You're going to lose everybody if you keep the death and destruction. At least you can keep killing people during the peace process, but like, it will be sidelined. Okay. It won't be that big of a story if you just keep quietly assassinating people. And the mainstream media won't cover it as much.
It's not trying to build up, as I've been reading, that they're building up weapons and other things. And if they are, they're not using the sites that we obliterated, but they're using possibly different sites.
But
We
then
know
again,
exactly where
the
they're
whole
going,
point of the
what they're
meeting
doing.
today
I
that's
hope they're
taking
not
place is
doing it
most likely
we don't
to
wanna
see
waste
how
a
much
few
more they can
more
escalate
B2,
conflict.
37-hour trip.
How much more they can escalate the conflict in Gaza, like how much more they can intensely bomb Gaza and like overtake the rest of the Gaza Strip, I suspect. But also beyond that, I think it's more so to just like go and nuke Iran out of orbit.
Can you clarify to us? Did you talk
Which
about
request
it?
are you talking about?
Dead on analysis, but why did Hamas agree to it? Out of options.
President Herzog. Did you talk with him directly?
President Erdogan?
Herzog.
Out of options, and also too many civilians were
I think he's
slaughtered.
going to be in great shape.
Too
He's
many
a
civilians were
wartime
slaughtered. They were
prime minister at
running
the
out of
highest
time. They were
level.
running out of
He's
hope. They were running out of
achieved
options.
tremendous success.
They decided
And
to
I'll say
stop
it,
the
you
ethnic
know,
cleansing,
if you
knowing
had
full well that there's no real like
8 out of 10
disarmament that's
prime
going to take
ministers in
place.
his
Because like, what are they going to
position
do?
right now?
Take the small arms away from the Gaza
54
Strip?
right now?
They don't have like
You
they don't
wouldn't
have
Israel any
rocket.
longer.
They don't have
Israel
like
would not
actual
exist.
missile launchers. You know what I
Say
mean?
two-
You can't really like
two of them
disarm
would, and
this
8 of them
group.
wouldn't. Those are not good odds.
Also,
You
the
needed
other
a
Arab
very
countries
special
leaned
man
in and
to,
pushed in that direction as well.
To really carry through.
And Turkey,
and
too.
really help Israel through this horrible jam. You know, these are major factions, and it started with our negotiation with Iran. I think it probably started with Soleimani. That was really where you mentioned that today, which started with Soleimani. Bad guy, doing bad things, hurting a lot of people, killing American soldiers and other soldiers. But it started right there, would probably be the starting point. And then from that point forward, but you have a wartime prime minister at the highest level. There could be other wartime prime ministers, but they'd lose. He won. And I think the people of Israel appreciate it. I think a lot of the people in the world appreciate it, actually. And because of that victory, we were able to get peace in the Middle East. If you had a different kind of a personality, if you had a weak person or a stupid person, and there are plenty of both of them, you would not have had success, and you might not have Israel. And you report for Israel. I know you're very proud of it, and you do a great job. You might not have a job because there might not be an Israel right now if you had a different prime minister.
Oh,
That's a big statement, but to me, it's a very simple statement to make. I'm looking at Pete Hegseth, and he's sort of nodding.
imagine.
If they
how
don't have a strong
terrible.
prime minister, Pete, you might not have Israel today. I think he'll go down in the record books. And, you know, I was a big help. I'll be honest with you, big help. Somebody said in the room, if you don't have Trump, you needed a proper combination of everything. And if you didn't have that combination, which they had, you would not have an existing Israel right now. and the people of Israel know it. That's why they like me, and it's why they actually like him. He's got a little bit of a love-hate more than I do over there. But you know what? Even the haters have a lot of respect for him. There's a lot of jealousy about him. A lot of jealousy. Jealousy is a bad word. But I believe you would not have Israel right now. So it's a big deal. Yeah, please.
A recent poll showed that as many as half of Gazans would be willing to leave the Gaza Strip if afforded the opportunity to do so. Back in February, you said that all Gazans should leave.
I heard that number today. Half of Gaza would leave. I've always said it. I said if they were given the opportunity to live in a better climate, they would move. They're there because they sort of have to be. I think it would be a great opportunity. But let's see if that opportunity presents itself. But we're helping the people of Gaza a lot. So is Israel, by the way. So we'll see what happens. But I saw that it was a poll. It was actually more than half the people would leave if they were given the opportunity. And I've been saying that for a long time. To me, it was common sense. So it's interesting.
Why wouldn't countries accept them?
Look, let's not talk about it because we don't want the controversy. Right now, we're helping Gaza. But if they were given the opportunity, I think even higher than that, the group that did the poll is usually, I call them negative pollsters. You have a lot of them. And yet this poll was, I think, very accurate, other than it would be more than half the people if given the opportunity. But they haven't been given that opportunity. So we'll see what happens.
Mr. President, have you reached a point of understanding regarding Syria?
We do have an understanding regarding Syria. Now, with Syria, you know, your new president, I respect him. He's a very strong guy, and that's what you need in Syria. You can't put a choir boy. You can't put somebody that's a perfect person. Everything's nice, no problems in life. You have the opposite there. He's a strong guy. We get along with him great. I can't ask for any more. He's been with us all the way. We had that mishap with ISIS, and he was with us all the way. He was fighting us. You know, he was fighting them. So I hope Israel, I'm sure that Israel and him will get along. I will try and make it so that they do get along. I think they will. Bibi, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, well, our interest is to have a peaceful border with Syria. Our interest is to have, and we openly say it, we want to make sure that the border area right next to our border is safe. We don't have terrorists, we don't have attacks, and we also want to secure our Druze friends. And by the way, I think not only the Druze, but other minorities, especially the Christians, should be protected as well in Syria and throughout the Middle East and in Nigeria. In your efforts, we back completely, because Christian communities are beleaguered around the world, and especially in the Middle East, but in parts of Africa too.
Yeah, especially in the Middle East, like the Christian Palestinians, Bibi.
It was President Erdogan that helped very much get rid of a very bad ruler of Syria. That was President Erdogan. And he never wanted the credit for it, but he really gets a lot of credit. Bibi agrees with that. I agree with. I mean, I know it.
Yeah, notice that they
And,
just
President
never.
Erdogan should get a
Obviously,
lot of
there's
good
no
credit
safety and
for
security
what
for the
he did. He
Muslims.
got
That's not a
rid
thing.
of some very bad people, and they've been wanting to do that for 1,000 years with different names, but for 1,000 years in Syria, President Erdogan did it, and we give him a lot of credit. I give him a lot of credit, but I think it's going to work out well between Syria and Israel.
Mr. President, about Lebanon.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
The Lebanese government, what we saw, is not meeting the terms of the ceasefire agreement, has failed to disarm Hezbollah, actually. In your view, should Israel strike the terrorist organization again?
Well, we're going to see about that. We'll see about it. The Lebanese government is at a little bit of a disadvantage, if you think of it, with Hezbollah. But Hezbollah has been behaving badly, so we'll see what happens.
Oh God.
I think President Trump put clearly the conditions of reform that he wants to see in the PA for them to be involved. And I think he put it very clearly what he wants to see, the kind of real reforms, not just perfunctory reforms, but real reforms. Stop pay to slay, change the curriculum in your textbooks, open up
Dog,
different
you need
society.
denazification. Israel needs the actual reforms. What are we talking about, man? What is this? I don't know if you saw it. Oh, yeah, no, I did. Yeah. I think I have it here, or maybe not.
And they were put then in the 20 points. And it's up to them.
Remember this, if we didn't do what we did to Iran, just to make the subject just slightly different, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. You wouldn't have a deal signed.
CNN broadcast audio of Trump obviously obliviously announcing land strikes on Venezuela during an obscure video interview last Friday.
People,
What?
Very well, I know them. They're great people. They wouldn't be able to have agreed to peace in the Middle East because you would have had a dark cloud hanging over everything. It wouldn't have been possible. So Iran has been greatly reduced in power, prestige. I don't want to use the word humiliation because, they're trying to build up again. But we can't let them build up because if they build up, there can't be peace in the Middle East. It was a mistake. When they wiped out Iraq and Iran were about the same power. And they fought each other with different names for 1,000 years. And then our country came out and blew up one of those two countries, namely Iraq.
Why is
And all of
U.S.
a
so
sudden,
public with
Iran had the
Israel?
whole Middle
Brother,
East
you know
open.
what it's like?
But that's
You know
not
when you
true
have like
anymore.
a,
That's not true anymore.
let me think. Who's like a celebrity that's like a serial abuser, right? When you have like a celebrity that's like a serial abuser, that's like a really bad person, but then they still keep getting jobs and they still keep getting brought on, and then people inevitably just like lose sight of that. A lot of people are saying Chris Brown, sure, right? People keep putting him on. This is basically what the United States of America is doing with Israel, because the United States of America is putting its arms around Israel because it's the most dominant country on the planet. That's the reason why they keep openly posturing this way. That's the reason why they keep flexing their relationship over and over and over again. The reason why they're doing that is so that, everybody else understands that Israel is under the protectorate of the United States of America. They can do whatever they want. It doesn't matter if you don't like that they've done. It doesn't matter if you don't appreciate the way they conduct themselves. None of it matters because the big dog in the room is attached at the hip to Israel. And that's precisely what's happening here. Okay? They don't care. They don't care about like, the negative PR or whatever. They don't give. It's America. What are you going to do?
But in the meantime, we're doing numbers that nobody's ever seen.
What are Americans going to do? Right? It's not like we can do anything about it. What can we do about it as Americans? We have a lot of distaste for this. We have a lot of anger and resentment for this kind of thing. And yet, nothing changes.
We are doing, and also despite the fact that we have a fool at the Federal Reserve. I mean, Biden reappointed him, and it's too bad. You would have thought he wouldn't have done that.
Bro, it's a flex too. I think
an absolute fool.
I think this is a flex, just like
Reserve, or he's doing a renovation of a
like
building.
everything that they're doing
He's up to 4.1
reads to me like they're just basically flexing the power that they have, the control that they have. I mean, think about it. The past
It's the
2
highest
weeks
price
of
in the
news
history of
coverage.
construction.
The past 2 weeks of news
Spending
coverage
more
revolved
money
around
on
Jeffrey
buildings
Epstein
than
and
per
Trump's
square foot.
administration directly, Trump's DOJ directly defending co-conspirators, hiding their names. Okay? And it doesn't even matter.
150 years. It's a
Like,
massive
we have
drop,
a
and it's a
pedophile
25%
protectorate
number. And we're
in the
under
White
budget
House.
and ahead of schedule. Now it's
And it doesn't matter.
and I told you,
None of it matters. Nothing matters. He's stealing oil from countries that we've declared foreign adversaries, potentially seeking to invade random Latin American countries, right? None of it matters. The economy is dull, and it still doesn't matter.
but it's it's a big
Everyone
for
is
a tiny
so
fraction.
locked
We're
in
under budget,
on the
ahead of
slop that they're
schedule,
consuming,
and
in
they
the
wanted it for
mere moments that they have to themselves,
the
in the moments that they have to themselves where they're not actually worried about, their financial troubles and making sure that they still have a roof over their heads or a hot meal in front of them.
This was built to
They're just
Biden administration.
invested in the slop.
I wrote by it the other day, and it's headed by
It's
the
too
Federal
difficult
Reserve.
for people to just
Too
tune in to exactly who is ruining their lives, to figure out who's exactly ruining their lives. Even if the people that are ruining their lives are doing it out in broad daylight openly stating it, openly saying, what are you going to do about it? Now, I don't know if things will change. I think there could come a point where, at least if the economy is really bad, if it gets to a point where it's so bad that people are genuinely suffering, like Great Depression style, because we're not there yet. The wealth disparity leading up to the Great Depression was not as bad as the wealth disparity that exists now. Having said that, for the poorest Americans and for the middle class Americans, they are not as they're not suffering as bad as they were during the Great Depression. And I think if they got there, if it got to that point, and it potentially could, then you would see some real revolts. And I don't know if those revolts would be directed at those in positions of power or directed at random people and groups, like minority groups that have no power whatsoever but have been vilified endlessly by this administration and by the right wing propaganda over and over again. But basically, things are still nowhere near as bad, I think. They're not bad enough, rather, for people to actually revolt and rise up.
To the Turkey? Are you going to approve a sailing of F-35 to the Turkey?
We're thinking about it very seriously.
And what is
What
your,
prevented-
reaction to this?
They'll never use it again.
He's robbing the American people blind. Yeah. Here's a great example of this, right? Here's a great example of this. Donald Trump is an open fraudster, right? We know he is. We know he doesn't pay his taxes. We know he doesn't pay his contractors. We know that he is currently using the executive office to cut deals for himself, right? To the tune of billions of dollars, as a matter of fact. He's cryptocurrency schemes. And yet a lot of people, even liberals, like, they get mad at that, but they don't get mad at that much. But the very same institutions that are also actively stealing money from Americans' pockets, people like Elon Musk that actually came to power, not elected, mind you, but appointed to a seat of power specifically to fire people at the federal government, are running around hyping up the narrative that, like, every Somali in America is actively robbing the welfare coffers blind, okay? Pointing to a real instance of corruption and a real instance of welfare fraud to drive home this narrative that actually it's not the wealthy guys you got to worry about, it's the Somalis. And Americans immediately lean into it. I was thinking about this. It's like Islamophobia. There's a concept of goy slop that the neo-Nazis have come up with, where it's kind of funny. They just like say it's a distraction. It's basically the version of it's basically the what do you call it? The version of distraction or a red herring, but in a edgy like neo-Nazi kind of way. Right? Peach is trying to call. What happened? Hold on. I thought the Goy Slop people were doing a bit until I just realized it's blatant anti-Semitism. No, it is, yeah. Wait, what? Hold on.
Trump greeting Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in front of Mar-a-Lago. The two are meeting today, hoping to make some progress on moving toward step 2 of the ceasefire plan. The president's talking right now. Let's see if we can listen in.
For last 3 days.
President Trump, are you going to have a green light for another attack in Iran?
Okay.
Mr. President, how quickly do you hope to move to phase 2 of the peace plan for Gaza?
As quickly as we can, but there has to be a disarmament. You know that we have to disarm with Hamas. So one of the things we'll talk about certainly, but there has to be a disarming of Hamas. Otherwise, very quickly. Yeah.
Can you say anything more about the explosion in Venezuela that you mentioned in a radio interview? Did the military do that? Can you share any more details
Well, it doesn't matter, but there was a major explosion in the dock area where they load the boats up with drugs. They load the boats up with drugs, so we hit all the boats, and now we hit the...
That's crazy. She's not muted. You don't have to mute. I know, but I didn't know what was going on, okay? Dummies. I didn't know what was actually happening. I thought it was a serious thing. I read the transcript. Peach apparently called me, okay? I wasn't paying attention. I read the transcript of her phone call because she left a voicemail, which was on stream apparently on her side. Hey, Hasan, it's me and Christian on the side of the road right now. We just got T-boned and my cards aren't working and Austin won't pick up his phone and like is bleeding out right now. So can you call me back? We just really need some help right now. Thank you. That's the transcript I read of the voicemail and I got worried. So I muted the stream to call them to see what was going on, only to realize that it was actually fake when she started asking me for $20. Oh my God. Oh, yeah. Okay. That's crazy. That's crazy. Anyway, it's also believable because Christian has been in accidents, you know? So I genuinely believed it. You know what I mean? Like, you can't tell me Christian's been in a car accident. I'm going to believe you. Anyway, okay. That's homophobic? Yeah, okay. Is the audio of the voicemail listenable? It is. I just didn't listen to it because I was live on stream trying to make sense of what was going on. Last time we believe women here. Yeah. Congratulations, Peach Jars. I will no longer be believing women. This is an anti-believing women now. Are you mad at them? No, I'm not mad at them. I don't. All right, let's continue.
The area, it's the implementation area. That's where they implement, and that is no longer around.
Is that the only strike that the U.S. has done?
I don't want to comment.
President Trump.
Yesterday there was an explosion overnight, and the Russians say that Ukraine tried to hit the residence of President Putin. Do you have any information?
No, I don't know about it actually, and I don't. I just heard about it actually, but I don't know about it. No.
Did you speak with?
That would be too bad. That would not be good.
What was the outcome of your telephone call?
That would be too bad. That would not be good.
Talk this morning. I waited till this morning because it was pretty late by the time we finished, like 2:30 in Russia, 2:30 in the morning. And we had a very good talk. We spoke at 8 o'clock in the morning our time, and it was a very productive talk. I mean, we have a few very thorny issues, as you can imagine. He knows about thorny issues probably better than anybody in the world, but it's working out. We have a couple of issues that we're going to get resolved, hopefully, and if we get them resolved, you're going to have peace. You're going to have Ukraine. They're losing 26,000 soldiers a month. Can you believe it? A month, 26,000 young, beautiful soldiers. And
wait,
plus,
what is this? Stop brigading Peachy Stream, crying, parasocial weirdos. Oh my God. We will ban every single person that is doing that. Okay? Every single person that's doing that, you will get banned here. Do not do like that. What's wrong with you guys, bro? It's fine. Normal. What is happening? Do not. Oh my God. I wish, like, I was thinking about this morning. It's like people don't have the appropriate level of smoke for like actual political actors, right? They have way more smoke for my friends and people who are aligned with them politically than they do for like actual people on the opposing side, you know? Preserve your energy and use it in the appropriate direction. Like even when people were like yelling about Atrioc, right? Earlier or yesterday, he is like by and large a dude that has like pretty decent politics. Like what do you think is going to happen when you're yelling at him? Like there's no reason to yell at him. Yell at the people that are making right-wing propaganda or the people who are promoting the right-wing propaganda as opposed to Atrioc. But of course, You probably, once again, have more of an opportunity to have him hear your anger and resentment. So you're going to use it on him. You're going to expend the limited amount of time and energy that you have on someone like that. Chad is not listening to you, HasanAbi. Jesus Christ, dude. God, I hate Twitch streaming. I genuinely, maybe 2026, I just quit. Maybe 2026, I just quit Twitch streaming and I just go to like either full-time video on demand YouTube videos or just like go away entirely. I can't. It's so lame. Everything sucks. Everything sucks. Move to TikTok? Yeah, let me move to TikTok after Larry Ellison bought it. World's hardest job? No, but it is so annoying, you know? It's not the world's hardest job. It's a super easy job, right? It's just like, but it's just so annoying. We know you won't. You need the live feedback attention too much, big bro. No, I mean, that's not the reason why I do this. I think the format that I have chosen to do this is not because I love real-time feedback, even though that does play a big role in my commentary. I think it's good to hear from different perspectives in real time while I'm in the process of covering the news. Anyway, so many people lose their income without you. I know every single one of my haters would probably off themselves if I quit.
Some people in Kiev, and relatively small, but a lot, you know, still people, and it's a lot of people. But 26,000 soldiers were killed last month. Yes, please.
President Trump, are you going to allow Turkish forces, and do you expect Turkish forces to be stationed in Gaza?
So I have a great relationship with President Erdogan, and we'll be talking about it. And if it's good, I think that's good. And a lot will be having to do with Bibi. We're going to be talking about that. But Turkey's been great, and he's been, you know, excellent as far as I'm concerned. I don't know about you. To me, he's been very good.
Can you guarantee that? Sure. Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about your relationship with Prime Minister Netanyahu and how important it is?
Would you say Trump mogged here? No, he's not. He's not mogging. His mandible is recessed. Random thought. Do they not want Turkey and Gaza specifically because of NATO concerns? They seem fine with other U.S. allies being there. Oh, no. I think it's more so drama between the two different vassals. Israel and Turkey have drama, specifically in Syria, where they both have different ambitions and different designs for what must take place in Syria. And I think there is already there's a lot of back and forth there. So that would heat up. That would reach a boiling point if the Turkish army was deployed to the Gaza Strip, and then obviously they're not going to fight against the Palestinians there. That's never going to happen, right? You have a higher likelihood of having the United Arab Emirates and the Saudi militaries actively fighting against Palestinian military or Palestinian militancy than you do with the Turkish army. Or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but I just don't think that would happen. So they would end up most likely being against Israel. Like there would be an inevitable conflict between a NATO military, the Turkish military, and Israel. For sure. And then that's a much larger crisis. Israel, Cyprus, and Greece signed a mid-sea defense pact. They keep crying about Turkey on Hebrew media. Yeah, no, there's a lot of conflict in the region between Turkey and Israel. And it's really interesting because they're both American servants. They both play a major role in advancing America's interests in the region. And yet there is a lot of there's a lot of back and forth in terms of like who gets to be the top dog. And I think Israel will always win that argument, no matter what happens. They have divergent interests in Syria. I imagine that has a lot to do with it. I mean, their divergent interests are technically their divergent interests in Turkey. There's also a divergent interest in Somalia. I think that's another big one too, because Turkey has a lot of ties to the current Somali government, and Israel's recognition of Somaliland is a foothold for Israel to have at least some kind of control on the other side of the entry point into the Red Sea, against like a line of defense against Yemen and the Houthis. So everywhere, like both Israel and Turkey are in line with America's goals in the region, and they play a very important role in advancing America's goals in the region. They're both anti-Iran, for example. There's never been a moment where like the Turkish military was like pro-Iran at all. They've always been anti-Iran, right? And obviously Israel has also always been anti-Iran. So they have similar, they have the same exact interest in advancing America's interest in the region. They also have similar enemies in the region. But ultimately, I think they're just trying to be the number one lapdog for America, if that makes sense. And in that battle, Israel's always going to win out. Turkey will always get little broed. I mean, obviously, they have a much larger army, and they're trying to play a bigger role in Ukraine. And also, they have this almost neutral position on Russia as well. So they get to be a middleman between Russia and Ukraine in some ways. And I mean, Turkey played a major role in taking out Bashar al-Assad in Syria and gift wrapped Syria for America and Israel. And yet Israel has expanded further and further into Syria. Turkey's goals for Syria, of course, is to create a buffer zone in the northern Syrian corridor, where they can resettle the Syrian refugees, many of them of Sunni descent that escaped into Turkey. 10 million of them were housed in Turkey, which was obviously another opportunistic move from Erdogan. It wasn't like a humanitarian thing at all. He was doing that so he could have some kind of leverage over the European, the EU nations, and he did use that aggressively. There's also the Rojava element here, where they do not want the Kurdish militias at all. They do not want there to be any sort of nation-state development or any sort of autonomous zone developed in that area for the Kurds. And that's a major point of contention. HTS does not have any power to actually deal with the Kurds at all either. So he is, or not HTS, sorry, Jolani slash, his new name is what? Ahmed Shara, or his old name is Ahmed Shara, whatever. Shara, Jolani, whatever you want to call him. Jolensky does not have any power and can't really do anything to satiate the appetite of the Turkish government in terms of giving them the buffer zone, right? That's like Syrian territory. Turkey also wants a unified Syrian state to prevent Kurdish autonomy in the northeast and use Syria as both a buffer zone and a subservient market like they used previous Idlib administered areas as. Yes. But they also, like I said, want to resettle a lot of the Syrian refugees that are still in Turkey into that buffer zone. And I don't think Israel wants that for some reason. I don't think Israel wants Turkey to have any sort of foothold in Syria. They just don't want Turkey to be a regional power in Syria at all. So they're pushing back and aggressively, doing Israel. Israel wants greater Israel. Israel's going to keep bombing Syria to achieve greater Israel. So, yeah. The difference, of course, between Turkey and Israel is that Turkey does not have a APAC, right? At most, what Turkey has been able to do in terms of like in terms of intervening in American domestic affairs was Eric Adams, right? A low level guy from, I think he was in Brooklyn as a council member, right? And then he lucked into the mayoral position, and then Turkey basically turned around and used that for small deals, and they offered him free Turkish Airlines flights and free hotels like that. In exchange for that, Eric Adams gave Turkey what? An assurance that he would not recognize the army, and also fast-tracked their fire inspections. That's it. To understand how different of a playing field Turkey is playing against Israel in terms of like any sort of domestic lobbying front, they're not even on the same planet, So that's the situation. I do think that, like I said, I do think that Turkey is trying to be a larger player. They're doing their very best, but they're not. They're nowhere near as successful in lobbying the American government. Abi, I do not think Erdogan cares where Syrian people live. They are more likely to be interested in populating the Syrian areas with radical Islamist militants who depend on Turkey for legitimacy and are committed to creating an Islamic state more than anything. I don't think Israel's goals are in conflict with Erdogan. Well, they sure seem to be fighting over it. I think even if they're not in conflict with one another, Israel doesn't seem to think so, because they are definitely trying to. Maybe Israel thinks they can use the Kurdish nation state as like a separate power against Iran, because there's a lot of Kurdish militias that they use in Iran as well. And obviously the Kurds have been historically a partner to American intervention in the region, only to get dropped the moment that America's interest wanes, or the moment that they want to offer Turkey something as a gift. And I suspect that in an effort to continue using Kurds as an American proxy in Iran, they keep floating the idea of like an autonomous region in Rojava. And I suspect that Israel wants that too, because I do see a lot of like pro-Kurdish nationalist sentiment from Israel too. So that's what it, and obviously Turkey doesn't want that. Turkey doesn't want that at all. Turkey would only allow any sort of like autonomous region, in my opinion, if it was backed by a Kurdish leadership that is subservient to the Turkish state and their interests. And that's never going to happen, because any sort of Kurdish nation state that will develop in the region will be developed in the region will develop along the same boundaries as like Israel. That is the goal that Americans have, if at all. And the only thing stopping that from happening is Turkey refusing to let that happen. What do you make of the peace deal with the PKK? Oh, that was an American gift back to Erdogan, so he could win some. Domestic points, brownie points. It's not the same as Israel though, because Kurds are indigenous to the land, Lamau. No, I understand that. Of course, it's not the same as Israel. I'm just saying that the function of a Kurdish nation state, if it was ever allowed to be developed in the region, would play a similar role to Israel. It would operate like a proxy, and I think, for the longest time, the reasons why America has never allowed that to happen is because it's more beneficial for America to just keep dangling them as like, militias that can disband or organize, as they dangle nation statehood in front of them over and over again, and then just like sell them down the line, as the United States of America has been doing far before this last version of the conflict, right? And that's it. Yeah, they use they also dangle it against Turkey as a threat too, for sure. What makes you think America was beyond the Turkey-Kurdish rapprochement? I thought that was driven by the hardline conservative Turkish politician. No, yeah, by Devlet Bahçeli, the leader of the MHP party, which is the ultra-nationalist party. The ultra-nationalist party was almost entirely crafted and supported by the CIA. And in its initial stages of development, it was utilized, not dissimilar to Gladio, against growing Kurdish nationalist movements that were aligning with the socialists. And it was far too close to, obviously, the USSR in proximity for America to not gain a stronger foothold over what eventually became a very valuable NATO partner. A very valuable NATO partner that has, missiles directly pointed at the USSR, or at the time directly pointed at the USSR. Is a hard position for the Kurds, Druze, Somalilanders, etc. to begin with. They have so few friends and can't really be picky with who they accept help from, but they also don't exactly love Israel or the U.S. and don't want to be under their influence. I don't know why my people are clowns. They keep being used like a fleshlight, then thrown out, absolutely useless. I don't know why Westerners treat us like we're some amazing group of people who are all socialists or libs. They don't realize we ruled by a bunch of militaristic mobs who coincidentally also work for the CIA, so the pro-Kurdish propaganda in the West is usually trying to advance their own interests rather than anything good for the region. Yeah. This is also true. But also the nationalistic, the ultra-nationalists were the ones who actually reached out and said Abdullah Öcalan, the jailed leader of the PKK, okay, was willing to cut a deal to disarm Kurdish militias in the region. Okay? It's really interesting that it was the ultra-nationalists that did that, right? They are the biggest ops of the Kurds in Turkey. They're the biggest ops of the Kurds in general, right? They're a part of the leadership coalition alongside Erdogan. So the very fact that he was the one who did this, as handpicked, as this shadow says, handpicked Gladio agent. I do not think PKK leader has any interest in actually solving the Kurdish question either. Erdogan doesn't care about it either. Talks between PKK and the state are behind closed doors, and all the rhetoric refer to Kurdish question as a matter of terrorism. Neither the Öcalan nor Erdogan are developing a framework for equal citizenship. Yeah. Devlet Bahçeli is literally a handpicked Gladio agent, so much so that Alparslan Türkeş, who offered himself to the embrace of NATO as a part of Gladio, called Bahçeli an agent. The ultra-nationalist movement in the country in Turkey is directly aligned with the State Department. And Erdogan also comes from the other side of American State Department intervention. Him and Fethullah Gülen come from the same background, the Islamist movement in Turkey. And that was also another CIA operation in the country. And if you are wondering why there's so much CIA intervention and involvement in Turkey, well, it's a NATO country. And as I was describing to you, it was important to make sure that Turkey did not fall to the pesky socialists, okay, to the scary socialists. And therefore, they quickly ensured that the armed, straight up terrorist gang members that were the ultra-nationalists dominate any kind of pro-Kurdish movement, any kind of socialist movement, any kind of trade unionist movement, which they did very successfully. And then from that point on, anyone that had any motion in Turkish politics was basically at most liberal, that presented themselves as a social democrat. Not dissimilar to other European countries where similar things took place, in Western Europe specifically.
For you to see him be pardoned by the Israeli president?
Look, he's a wartime prime minister. He's done a phenomenal job.
Yeah, MHP is still ultra-nationalist, but they're relatively moderate because the new version of that is Zafer, which is like the new Hitler youth. There are many Israel supporters among them. I know. They all came after me in the beginning. Yeah, there's also another meta that's even more ultranationalist, then the ultranationalist party that has gained the attention of a lot of young people. It's like an online phenomena in the country. And those were the guys who were like so anti-Arab that, I mean, there's a lot of people in Turkey that are anti-Arab, let's be real. Part of that is because the Syrian refugees that came in were presented as like a move, an Islamist move by the Erdogan administration, as though he has any care or consideration for Muslims anywhere around the world. Let's be real, he doesn't. But yeah, you called them dogs, Lamont. Yeah, I said they were dogs to America. And they got so mad. Yeah, I said they were. I mean, it's funny because they call me İngiliz uşağı, which means a servant of England, which is pretty funny. But I called them. Abi hala onu da biliyorsun burada. Sıfır konteks, sıfır nuance. Evet. Turks still sensitive about that. When I said you are a dog to America for being pro-Israel. This was right after October 7. And there were anti-Arab Turks in my chat, like nationalist Turks in my chat yelling at me because they were saying like, stuff like, what were they saying? They were basically saying like, oh, if you love the Arabs so much, why don't you go fight in Palestine? Like that's the type of they were saying. Was Saudi Arabia's role in all this, you think? I mean, they're also servile. Saudi Arabia is servile. All of these guys. Lots of libs in Turkey, huh? I mean, there's liberals in Turkey, but there's a lot of nationalists in Turkey as well. Turkish nationalism is very different. Like, it's not... coming from that background of the United States of America, I always laugh about American patriotism because Americans are far too invested in burger to actually develop like a real nationalist movement. They don't have any sort of like national mythos that they identify with in the same way that like Turks do, because Turks have like thousands of years of history that they can point to, like Panturanist attitudes that they can point to. It's just not even, there's no comparison. Like it's just not a thing. Americans are far too invested in eating jalapeno poppers to be as nationalist as like average European even. It's pretty funny. Like there's not enough history there to even concoct some sort of like a mythos, even though that hasn't really stopped Nazi Germany from building one whole cloth out of nothing. You know, the Viking Nord. But ultimately the real reason why I think Americans are disorganized is that nationalism requires a sense of discipline and a sense of order and a investment in the myth, the national myth, the superiority myth. Like Americans are white supremacists, but even that's like secondary. They're far too that's why I say the American civic religion is capitalism. It's not nationalism. It's like pure capitalism. Are ulusalist like Pirinçek also CIA backed? No. Pirinçek is like super anti-NATO, I'm pretty sure. I don't think they're CIA backed. Maybe I'm wrong though, but I don't think they're CIA backed. I think, what do you mean? They literally, didn't one of those guys kidnap like a, yeah, one of his followers literally kidnapped like an American Marine outside of a NATO base, put a bag over his head and like beat his ass and kidnapped him. I don't think they're CIA.
Taken Israel through a very dangerous period of trauma. Israel with other people might not exist right now, if you want to know the truth. That's a pretty big statement, but it's true. I feel that. You had the wrong prime minister. Israel right now would not exist because they were met with a force the likes of which very few countries could have handled, and we worked together. And we were extremely victorious, to put it mildly. Now I hear that Iran is trying to build up again, and if they are, we're going to have to knock them down. We'll knock them down. We'll knock the hell out of them, but hopefully that's not happening. I heard Iran wants to make a deal. If they want to make a deal, that's much smarter. You know, they could have made a deal the last time before we went through, a big attack on them, and they decided not to make the deal. They wish they made that deal. So I think, again, they should make a deal. They want to make a deal.
When he keeps saying Israel wouldn't exist, and for me, it's like, bro, don't threaten me with a good time. You know what I mean? Do you know how many people hear that and go, oh my God, that would be amazing?
But sometimes that doesn't happen. Yeah, please.
Mr. Trump, hi, Nadav Elimelech, 24 News Israel. Would you support the overthrow of the Iranian regime?
Of who?
Iranian regime.
I'm not going to talk about overthrow of a regime. They've got a lot of problems that are in. They have tremendous inflation. Their economy is bust. Their economy is no good. And I know that people aren't so happy, but don't forget, every time they have a riot or somebody forms a group, little or big, they start shooting people. You know, they kill people. And the people tend to, I've watched this for years. There's tremendous discontent. They form 100,000, 200,000 people. All of a sudden, people start getting shot. And that group disbands pretty quickly. So I've watched it for years. They're vicious, vicious people, yeah.
Mr. President, will you support an attack, Israeli attack on Iran if Iran will not have a deal? If Iran will continue with their ballistic missiles and also nuclear weapons?
If they will continue with the missiles, yes. The nuclear, fast. Okay? One will be yes, absolutely. The other was, we'll do it immediately.
Mr. President, Yaron Avraham from Channel 12 News. What are your plans regarding Gaza for the next few weeks?
Well, we're going to be dealing on Gaza. That's why this very great prime minister is here right now. We're talking about Gaza. We're talking about a lot of things. We have about 5 major subjects that we're discussing, and Gaza will be one of those subjects.
Mr. President, can you guarantee that the last hostages on Philip will be released before we'll continue to the second phase of the Gaza plan?
Well, let's put it this way. Every hostage...
Trump is hype mogging him. That's true. He is actually hype maxing.
Just about that's been released was released because of me, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, my whole team, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth. They were all released because of us. None were released in the Biden administration. None. They were all released because of us. Then we had a lack of releases with respect to the dead. And all of a sudden they started coming back because I said, nope, you said you were going to... We have one wonderful young man whose parents are right now inside. And he's, what beautiful parents, a beautiful brother, sister, and like a beautiful family, and they're waiting for their son. It's the only one left, and we're doing everything we can to get his body back. And the parents just said, hopefully he's alive. And I said, I'd love you to think that way. Okay?
President
so
Trump,
everything we can.
do you have President Trump?
So I think this upcoming year is going to be a pretty big one because the Obama 10-year defense pact that was $30 billion is finally coming to an end with Israel. Because Obama, on his way out, if you guys recall, he's even though he was considered to be the most anti-Israel president, oh my God, he hates Jews. He hates Jews. Like, that's what they used to say in Israel all the time. And that's what a lot of people used to say about Obama for the crime of stepping out of line and actually doing the JCPOA, the Iran denuclearization agreement. On his way out, he dropped a cool 30 bill, right? Which is nothing, right? I mean, come on. It's anti-Semitic that it wasn't $60 billion. Let's be real. And it was a 10-year contract specifically to refill the Tamir interceptors for the Iron Dome defense. And it was a $30 billion contract over 10 years. Now, of course, those numbers seem marginal. They seem tiny in comparison to how much money Brandon and then Donald Trump has given to Israel since then. But that contract is coming to an end. Right? That contract is now coming to an end because 2026 is when it's going to end. So now Benjamin Netanyahu needs to demand a cool 60 bill this time. Okay? And I guess, is it in 2028? Oh, okay. I thought it was going to end in 2026 because it was in, I guess like it got implemented in 2028. Is that what it is? Or maybe I'm thinking of something different. It's going to get renewed. Are you kidding me? Yes. It will get, they will double up. They will double up. What is a contract? Don't they gift it? Wait, the contract is basically allocating congressional funds. That's what it is. They might triple up. Think about it this way. We squeezed a cool $40 billion to Argentina just to bail out one of Scott Bessent's buddies, okay, who's still holding on to Argentinian debt and does not want the Argentinian country to default, okay? We squeezed out $40 billion for them basically overnight. Why wouldn't we give Israel $100 billion? I feel like that's the most anti-Semitic thing I've ever heard. If we're giving Argentina 2 infusions of 20 bill at a time when China is literally purchasing their soybeans instead of our soybeans because of the tariffs that took place. Because remember, like Donald Trump gave Argentina $40 billion after Argentina was like, oh, we'll sell you the soybeans, China. Like they started selling soybeans to China because China stopped purchasing American soy, right? They got the flags mixed up. That's why Donald Trump gave Argentina $40 billion, because I was like, what is this, the Israeli flag? Is this the Israeli flag? Oh, it's my favorite flag. Give him $40 billion. That's what happened. Yeah, it's same colors, you know? So yeah, when you think about giving Argentina $20 billion, I think it's only $20 billion. I don't think they gave the other $20 billion because of backlash. Well, they were slated to give $40 billion, but maybe they gave a cool $20 billion. Okay, fine. Initially, it was supposed to be 20, and then they doubled up on it, right? And maybe they didn't give the second $20 billion. Not that it matters. The very fact that we're giving $20 billion to Argentina to begin with is insane. Okay. Now, when you think about that, if you actually think about that, though, if you're giving $20 billion to Argentina, you got to give $100 billion to Israel. Okay? You have to. This makes no damn sense. Otherwise, you're anti-Semitic.
Out of all of these people, and I'm not just talking about the final 20.
That's also partially why it's so funny when people are just like, I can't believe the amount of fraud that's taking place. The amount of fraud that's taking place. Brother, once again, we're talking multiple billions with a B overnight shipped off for the hopes and dreams of one guy, or to protect the financial investment of one guy. And you're out here sweating small stuff. Not to say that like the charity fraud, Medicare fraud, or any number of different like versions of fraud that's taking place on U.S. soil, whether it's done by Somali people or whether it's done by white people, doesn't matter, whether it's done by Russian nationals, as though there's another case of fraud there too. Like all of that should be prosecuted. I am in favor of social welfare. I'm in favor of of having a strong welfare state, and therefore, of course, I want people who abuse that structure to be punished. Okay, just so we understand. Having said that, though, if you have smoke for what you foresee or what you are seeing in front of you that's taking place in Minneapolis, you should have the same exact kind of smoke for the Trump administration. You should have the exact same kind of smoke, if not way more, for Elon Musk. These guys are robbing blind every day of the week. And then they're basically turning your attention over to Minnesomalia, and you're falling for it. You're like, oh, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. Why is nobody talking about it? Why is nobody covering it? Of course people are covering it. Nobody should be fleecing America and Americans, okay? Nobody should be taking funds away and reappropriating the funds back to their own goddamn pockets.